So on this feast, Sister Mary already has given us a reflection in the opening welcoming about Mary, the centrality, of course, of Mary on this feast. And if we look at the gospel, it's so fascinating and so interesting that in John's gospel, Mary appears only twice. The first time, of course, is in chapter 2, the great feast of Cana. It's the feast, of course, of celebration. It's the first miracle. And Mary only speaks twice in the gospel at that time. They have no wine. And then do what he tells you. That's all she says. She never says another word in the Gospel of John. It's amazing, isn't it? And yet we know who she is. And that comes forth, it seems to me, in this chapter 19 that we just listened to. John the evangelist trying to, I think, emphasize at the crucial moment when Jesus gives his life, abandons himself into the hands of the Father, which has been his whole journey from the moment he was born to give his life back to the Father. It's Mary who stands at the cross, and so do three other women. Notice it's the women and one man. 4 women, 1 man. What does this tell us about church? So, and the word mother appears 5 times. There's only 3 verses. The woman only appears, Mary, twice in the whole gospel. And yet, at this moment, the word mother appears 5 different times. So what's the evangelist trying to tell us, it seems? Well, that this woman is mother, not only of Jesus who's on the cross, but she's now, and Jesus indeed in his last moment of life, gives over his mother to his beloved disciple, who appears, by the way, only 4 times in the gospel. We don't know who he is. Many speculate that it's John the Apostle. But is it us? Are we at that cross? And is Mary being given to us, that she is our mother, and that we are to care for her as she cares for us, as any mother does for son and daughter, for family. And so perhaps the gospel that's been chosen for this great feast, Our Lady of Carmel, takes us to Mary, takes us to the Gospel of John, takes us to the epicenter where Mary appears the second time and is given over to John, or the beloved disciple, whoever it is. It is, in some scripture scholars' mind, it's the church. John, or the beloved disciple, represents the church, you and me, all of us. And Mary is being given to us as our mother. And how appropriate this gospel should be chosen for this feast, where she's mother of the Carmelite community, not just here in Baltimore, but across the world. So she's mother, of course, of a church that is suffering and struggling. And as Sister Mary mentioned in the beginning of this Mass, we're remembering in a special way the immigrants at the border, by the thousands, by the 10,000s, by the 100,000s. And we remember, of course, in a special way, the children. And we all were horrified, weren't we, when we saw on television that terrible photograph, that newsreel of the father, 25 years old, from El Salvador, and his daughter with his arm over her shoulders, she only 2 years old, floating in that Rio Grande River. I'm told that the daughter had been actually taken over and was on the American side. He told her to wait. He went back to bring back his wife and others. And she followed her father, went into the water, and he realized he had to go save her, and they both were lost. Such a great tragedy. But that's an example of what's been going on, the horror of our border. And who are we as a people? Who are we as a nation? And where is Mary, the mother, caring for her beloved? Always the people on the edge, as Pope Francis reminds us again and again. We're a church that is a church in the field hospital, caring for those in greatest need. And I think that's what, as we celebrate this feast of Mary, the Mount Carmel, that she reminds us that she's caring not just for us, but for the whole church, but particularly the little children, the ones on the edge of life, the broken, the immigrant, the forgotten, the imprisoned. That's what we are called to be mindful of tonight as we celebrate this feast.